what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Footcandle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. With me is Chris Fry. We are with the Footcandle Film Society and the annual Footcandle Film Festival coming up this September. More details about that to come in the weeks ahead. But Chris, how's it going today?
It's going well. We are with the film that we're going to be reviewing today. I think we're entering the post-Oscar slump that we sometimes, we have that happen, but we're coming out of that slump, I guess I should say, and we're not quite to like the summer blockbuster time, obviously, yet, but we're in movies that I'm really interested in talking about that are being released. So I'm doing well.
Good. Well, speaking of, the film we'll be reviewing today is one that was going to be a 2024 release.
Right.
And, I think it might have been on one of your anticipated lists, I think, well back.
And it was again for this year. Yeah.
It was again for this year. It's been bumped a few times, but it has now made it here. We are talking about the film Mickey 17, the latest film from acclaimed director Bong Joon-ho, starring Robert Pattinson. We're going to be discussing that film in just a moment with a review. After that review of that film, we're going to jump into some movie trailers to share with you. So talk about some upcoming films that we want to watch the trailers and kind of give our thoughts on these films that are coming out and soon to be released. And then, Chris, I believe you have a recommendation also for us at the end of the episode, where Chris gives a recommendation to the listeners of something he thinks is worth checking out if you have time.
Yes.
That sounds like a plan. Did I capture all the bullet points of this episode?
I believe
correctly?
so.
Okay.
Yes.
Good deal. I'll go ahead and give you a fair warning. I'm a little off my game this morning. I'm a little tired. The whole daylight savings time always throws me off a little bit. I forget how much it does. So, and that will lead into a little bit of my comment on the Mickey 17 review we'll get to in a minute. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get into that review, though, of the film. Bong Joon-ho, director and writer, and starring Robert Pattinson. The film is Mickey 17.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you were thinking at this point, what have I done?
How lucky can one guy be?
Nothing was working out, and I wanted to get off of Earth.
You're applying to be an expendable?
Yeah.
You read through the whole application.
Ain't that a kick in the head?
I should have read through it.
Once you die, we'll print a new version of your body.
My head keeps spinning.
They made me work my ass off on one mission after another.
Every time you die, we learn something new, and humanity moves forward.
Oh, wait. He's alive. It's fine.
My life is gonna be.
Mickey 17 is director Bong Joon-ho's much-anticipated follow-up to 2019's Best Picture winning Parasite. Bong Joon-ho's filmography has the theme of looking at class, the haves versus the have-nots. Mickey 17 stars Robert Pattinson as an expendable known as Mickey. He gets this designation as an expendable when he signs up to go on a dangerous journey to colonize an ice planet for refugees fleeing planet Earth that has become almost inhabitable. Before I give my thoughts on one of my most anticipated films of 2025, I want to hear what you made of the film, Alan.
So I made the comment in the lead up that,
Yes,
daylight savings time always kind of kicks me a little bit. It's Monday morning. We just had daylight savings time change like about 24 hours ago. So it's a little, I'm a little off my game. I comment on that in relation to the film Mickey 17 on Friday night because I saw most of this film.
Uh-oh.
And I just going to cop up to it because I did not have time to go back and see it a second time. But I was much, much more sleepy than I expected to be. And I'm not saying that as an indictment of the film.
Okay.
I'm just saying you may have to remind me of a few fill in the gap points of this film. So my review, Chris, is very subjective. I'm kind of just laying it out there. I don't think anybody should listen to my review of this film and make any judgment on this film, positive or negative, based on just my opinion. I'm going to rely really on you, Chris.
Uh-oh.
I've seen enough of it where I think I can give a basic opinion, but again, I just don't want my opinion to have any weight in this situation. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to decide, should I go see Mickey 17? Chris's voice is the one I want you to listen to here in a minute with the review.
A lot of pressure there.
That being said, I thought Mickey 17 was a little better than fine, probably more in the okay category. I wanted it to be better than that. It never quite got there for me. I think there were some, I think, honestly, I felt like this is a film that I liked the genre that we're playing in. I thought Robert Pattinson in the lead role was amazing. I really enjoyed his performance in both of his characters, but I also felt like Bong Joon-ho was playing it a little safe in a lot of cases. I mean, I felt it was I felt it was a lot more on the nose than I guess I was hoping for from one of his films. And I think there was an opportunity to do a little bit more with it. I think the film hewed more into just a more standard movie fare than I was expecting it to be. And it never hit the highs in any category that I was hoping for. I mean, was it funny? Yes. Are there moments I could really call out that I really thought were extremely funny? No. Was it insightful and commenting on society? Yes. But was it to any point where I felt like it just really was sharp and a very, very well-written satire? No. So it's like, it was a good piece of entertainment, but I was hoping and wishing for more. Count me in unfair expectations on that regard. But I do think, I think it was a fine film. Look, I think in the hands of any other director, I'd be walking away saying, oh my gosh, this was a great, really, really good movie. I think there is some fact that this is his follow-up to a film that I love. I know you love as well, with Parasite and a lot of his body of work. I do feel like this is a much safer, simpler entry that I did not do what I was hoping it would do, but maybe that's more on me. And maybe the 10% of the movie where I was kind of dozing off a little bit was genius and I completely missed the boat on it. I don't know. Again, take my review with a grain of salt. I want to hear from Chris Fry, though. Chris, this was on your most anticipated films of the year list. I want to hear, what do you think of Mickey 17?
So walking out of the film, there was a gentleman that was in front of my wife and myself, and he actually kind of very nicely said, oh, you go ahead, because we were walking down these big, huge steps and the theater that we were in. So she went ahead, and I was like, oh, you go ahead. He's like, no, you go ahead. And I was like, man, this is really nice. So he filed out of the theater. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask this guy. He was a younger guy. Turned around, I was like, so what do you think? He's like, oh, I loved it. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, interesting. I was like, and he's like, what'd you think? And I'm like, big fan of Parasite. I really like his films. This was good, but it was messy.
Yeah. Messy is a good word for it.
And the more I sit with my immediate reaction of good but messy, I'm liking it more and more the more I think about it. And I do need to see it a second time, because I think some of the messiness, when seen through the lens of a second time, may be more intentionally messy. And that could be a critique that I give the film just because I really like Bong Joon-ho and I'm giving him a pass. The film was entertaining. The film is similar with theme, like I mentioned in the intro, his whole thing with talking about haves and have-nots and class struggle. And you look at one of his films like Snowpiercer, or even Okja, which is very environmentally minded, but has a theme with beasts that are treated unfairly. In a way, you could say you mash up those two films, and what your result is Mickey 17. Okay. I was surprised to learn at the end of the film, this was based on a book.
Yeah.
Which I was not aware of going in. I thought it was original Bong Joon-ho. I didn't know he'd gotten the idea from based on a book. And yeah, I guess, like you say, expectations curse us. So I think I was surprised of the shagginess, because I don't consider any of his other films to be that. And especially coming off Parasite, which I definitely didn't feel it was like that. That kind of took me back. And midway through the film, as things were going on, I was like, this isn't a bad film. I am being entertained, but I'm probably going to say, just for lack of making it concise, this is just like a 3-star. It's just okay.
Yeah.
But then the more the film went on, and I thought about certain things, and there is towards the end, I won't give anything away because we try not to do that here. We don't want to spoil movies for people. This just came out, so a lot of people haven't seen it yet. Mickey has kind of a dream that we don't know is a dream, and then he snaps out of it. That kind of fake out, I thought, was a little bit more what I expect from Bong Joon-ho about being smart with filmmaking and trying to trick. And, that whole aspect of like you see something and you're like, oh my gosh, how's this happening? And then it's like, it's like a horror movie trope that you use a lot of times, or like an action thriller thing, a bad guy pops up back alive or something like that. And so I appreciated that. I appreciate that moment. It was like one of my favorite things of the film.
Yeah.
Actually, the fact they did that. And I think by messy, I think the film is also trying to do so much. And I don't knock it for that. A couple episodes ago, I did like my top biggest swings in cinema for 2024. This is going to make my list for 2025 without a doubt, because there is political commentary there that's going on. There is environmental commentary.
I mean, Chris,
there's the class commentary.
I almost think it's a conglomeration of all of his recent films. I think there's
fair.
Parasite in here.
Sure.
I think there's Snowpiercer for sure.
Yeah.
Okja's in here. Even The Host, being kind of a monster movie. I mean, there's a whole kind of creature monster element to it at one point. It's like, it's just taking all these elements, and that's my whole both positive on it. I think it's a big swing, and I was definitely kept entertained during the movie.
Right.
My disappointment is I just don't feel like it did any of those elements as good or better than it did in any of his other films. And so some part of it came out very shaggy. Like you said, it's just messy. It didn't feel, this felt honestly, and I don't want to make assumptions about what was happening behind the scenes, but the fact this movie was delayed for so long, I feel like this movie was tampered with. Like, whether it was by Bong Joon-ho himself, like reworking it, I don't know. I just feel like this is a movie that got a lot of more time and hands on it than it needed to. And it almost got reworked to the point where it became messy while trying to cover so many different things in a film. I don't know. That's the impression I got with it. I think there's a cleaner film in there somewhere that I wish we could have seen.
I cannot remember where I saw him being quoted, but somewhere floating around the internet in the lead up to this release, I saw a quote and him referencing the fact that it had been pushed from 2024 to 2025. If I can believe the source, which I can't mention here because I don't remember it, he was like, it was basically like, the film, I got final cut. I got to make the film I wanted, and because of that, that's the push in the release. So for good or for bad, and you're thinking,
Yeah.
And I think if there could have been one or two fewer plot threads or things that it was trying to do, it probably would have been more successful. Like, for instance, some of the other films we mentioned, Snowpiercer, it's pretty straightforward what they're doing there. I mean, there's a lot going on, but the theme of it, Parasite, pretty straightforward what's going on there. And this had so much that I think it may have suffered from that. But I like the film. I give it a recommendation. I think it is one that does benefit from seeing it on the big screen because it's just, it's a science fiction film. There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's some big set pieces to it.
Yeah, so it's worth seeing on screen. I'll echo what you said about Robert Pattinson. I thought he did great.
He is so good. I will say my only concern with Pattinson, not with his performance. His performance is great. He's basically playing, later in the film, he plays a dual role, which the fact that he was able to make those two characters distinct enough and just, you see they're the same person, but just two people with just like completely like different trajectories once they like were made, or recloned or whatever.
Sure.
It was great to see. My only issue with his character is I just don't feel like that the Mickey we're following in the first half of the film, I'd never felt like that was truly the same Mickey we were following in the second half. And I get character development, and of course things are happening and the character's progressing, but I felt like it lost sight of who that initial character was. Because later in the film, I'm just like, I'm not sure if I recognize this guy anymore. It's like, I want to say he hews more into a very non-interesting character, where I think in the first half of the film he's a very interesting character, and I think that there's something that was missing there. And yeah, I'm sure it was a little bit of trying to make the development of the character that he's starting to understand what's going on. He's starting to be a little more of an advocate, or trying to fight for things a little bit more later in the film. But I still felt like it was a different character.
That's
so
interesting.
I don't claim Pattinson for that. I mean, he played it well all the way through, but it did feel like a different written character later in the film.
That's interesting. I did not feel that way at all. However, with what you're saying, I would actually take that as more of a feature than a bug.
Okay.
Because replicating, you lose, even with all this technology, I would think you would lose some sight, especially after 17 replications of something that's original, cloning of it. You lose some of the original, what made the thing original, what made Mickey Prime, I guess if you want to say Mickey Prime. There were little things that they would slid in there. There again, there's so much going on. It's kind of like, if you're not fully awake for the whole film,
true.
You're going to miss things because they don't touch on it more than once. Mickey 18, which is the person you're referencing, where he gets to literally play a dual role. It's shown in the trailer, so we're not really spoiling anything. Is different from Mickey 17, and that and then at one point, a love interest of Mickey's says, "Oh yeah, through the different iterations, one cried all the time, one was there," and she says kind of how like every little iteration is a little different. We kind of get a little bit of an explanation for that. The scientists that are working on Mickey 17, you can tell they're into it, but then they're not, because they're playing, I think it's quarters. They're playing some game at one point, like a big group, and we're having flipping quarters over the table while the process is going on. And they should all be like very attentive and taking, and one of them trips over a wire and it pulls out during this replication process, which you would think would be pretty important. And it's just like, oh, well, and they and they kind of stumble and cram it back in. So that could have established like human error and not caring and not being, and actually a little bit of the haves and have-nots. Scientists, well-respected, the haves, and they're doing this process of this thing that is, it's a replicant. It's an expendable. Who cares? Don't pay any attention to it. Oh, if something's slightly off, well, that's right. Who cares? Doesn't really matter.
Sure.
And, the odd thing is, at some points, he is responsible for their livelihood. He has to go out and fix stuff outside of spaceship.
Right.
If he didn't fix it, they could die.
No, yeah.
Or he has to prove the environment. So
the overall concept is very clear on the nose. I mean, absolutely. The themes are all there. I think my comment comes more into it is the messiness of the film. I think the film just is trying so much and trying to do so much and trying to say so much that it just kind of, everything feels very watered down and it feels very shaggy. I guess back to your original term on that.
Yeah,
so, I feel like his character kind of was a culprit of that, kind of got caught up in that. So
yeah, interesting. Yeah, like I said, to me that would be more of a feature than a bug.
Yeah, but again, if the film, if I'm having to try to rationalize that and think about it afterwards, I feel like that's the film kind of failed a little bit in that regard for me, because if I'm having to reconcile that kind of thing afterwards, the film didn't work.
I'll push
the way
back
it
and
did.
say if Mickey 18 had been like Mickey 17, that would have been boring. You need a little bit of character arc to make the film interesting.
No, this has nothing to do with
has to be
17 and
different.
18. 17 and 18 are great. I mean, the difference is there. I'm talking about 17 himself. His development as a character throughout the film is where I think things dropped off a little bit. So yeah, anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Overall, I've just said good but messy, and I haven't mentioned any issues, and you've mentioned yours. I'll say two issues, and they were areas where I can pinpoint. I felt like shagginess that could have been taken out of the script and made it stronger. Not even necessarily themes, But characters. Stephen Yeun, he's in the film. He's good. He plays a friend of Mickey that basically they get into trouble. They owe money. And because of that, that's what kind of leads Mickey to say, I just want to get off this planet however possible. I need to escape this mobster that's going to come get me. I'm going to sign up, not being necessarily the sharpest knife in the drawer, the brightest bulb. He signs up to be expendable, not really understanding or comprehending what that means. Then Stephen Yeun kind of gets left behind and then comes back later. But to me, there was really no reason to have Stephen Yeun there, other than I guess maybe you're thinking, well, Mickey on his own wouldn't have come up with this scheme to get rich, to start a company, a macaroon company. But I don't know. The fact that he doesn't do it successfully, I would have bought that. Yeah. So kind of Stephen Yeun, even though I like him, he's a great actor, I think carving that away would have streamlined the story a little bit and would have been more successful. Unfortunately, there's another point. One other thing that I'll say, also an additional character, I cannot find her name.
Yep. Yeah, I know where you're going. Same way.
So there's in the film, there's a romantic lead. I mentioned there's a romantic lead that's with Mickey 17. She's played by Naomi Aki, I think is how you say her name, Nasha, which is interesting. Sometimes in the film, and I thought it may have been a joke, Nasha is actually said so it almost sounds like nauseous, which I think, I don't know, that I think, and it is being kind of billed as a comedy. The comedy is very dark, and I think the comedy is very subtle. So remind me of that, because I'll end on a strong point about the comedy being subtle. Anyways, coming back, there's another love interest in a way, I guess, for Mickey that kind of happens, or he kind of gets a competition, I guess, for Nasha gets a little bit of competition. That's touched on, and then that character completely disappears from the film.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the very end, comes back and has like a little bit of a laugh moment, if you will. And not that I minded the laugh moment. I did think it was funny. But I was like, yeah, but what happened to her all this rest of the time? Like, if you just carved her out, we didn't really need that.
No, that was a whole subplot there that I thought became overdone and unnecessary. And it's one of those things too. It causes me to ask more questions later in the film than it did to keep my interest and engagement in the film as it should. So yeah, that's the kind of thing. Those characters, it's like, all right, why were they there? What's the purpose? Obviously, if they were introduced and given so much screen time, there must be some rationale for them being here. And later in the film, you realize, no, not really. They're and the Stephen Yeun's character, like you said, gone for so long, played some part in the beginning, and it kind of helped set up the story, but then it comes back and actually does have some impact late in the film, but it's kind of as a little bit of a throwaway.
Gets a little bit of a coda
too. It's like a little bit of a throwaway thing. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't understand why we were spending time on this. The film could have been a much cleaner film. Trim away a couple of those subplot characters because it didn't need them. And I think the film had the concept in the original core of the film strong enough. You've got the two versions of Mickey, and you've got the Nasha, and then you've got the scientists and the political mechanism around them. That's a film. Like, you got it. You got the characters you need. You don't need anything else beyond that. So yeah, I do think that I think you're right. I think that hurt it. In my mind,
I think, obviously I'm a bigger fan of the film. I'll mention one final thing that I think.
Yeah, I don't not like the film. I think it was just a very passable entertainment film that could have been a lot more if it was a little stronger, tighter, and
So I'll mention, I'm going to come back and touch on the comedy, but before I do, I'll mention a third thing. Even though still really high on the film, they're doing a lot of political commentary with Mark Ruffalo's character, who plays kind of a failed politician, and
like a more of a religious figure who tried to get into politics and failed, and like you said, now he's kind of given an opportunity to take things in his own hands and create his own destiny for the world. So yeah.
Right. And it's And I think if the political climate we were currently living in was different, maybe it wouldn't almost see as, I could say how people could almost see it as kind of eye rolling because it's so on the nose. But I think if it wasn't, if we were in a different time, but it is the film that it was. And when this was made and when production was started, I have no idea. So that was maybe a little too, but I gave it a pass for that. Toni Collette, I thought she was good, but also kind of playing a very odd character. Something which, if people have seen the science fiction film Soylent Green, maybe that's what he was trying to do with her obsession with food and sauces.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like another little diversion. I was like, okay. And there again, this is based on a novel.
Yeah.
So maybe all the things that I'm coming down on, the things that could be trimmed away, maybe in the novel they have time and they make a lot more impact. But that thing to me kind of seemed a little odd, a little strange. Okay. I'll end on a positive.
Yeah, end on positive.
And I mean, overall, I like the film a lot. But I'm still kind of struggling because it's so shaggy. Need to see it a second time. But when I felt, I was like, oh, that's the kind of comedy we're going to get. It is not, broad jokes. This isn't a Will Ferrell movie. It's not supposed to be. But, and it happens very early. The first time we see Mickey being printed, they do a joke that a lot of people may now not get. Maybe millennials won't get it. Because back in the day when earlier printers, they would start printing something out and then they would pull it back in and print it. And it would kind of like jerk the paper at that point back then. And Mickey, when he is being printed a couple of times, like he is jerked back in and then spit back out a little bit. And that, I laughed at that and I'm like, that's a very inside, subtle, kind of a hint that, we've got this amazing technology, but it's still
very kind of
quirky.
Trapped in.
So and they did that not just once or twice, but they did that a lot of times. They would show that whole printer thing, and I laughed every time.
You just hit on something. I commented earlier on that even though I found the film funny, there were no moments that I could really say these were really funny moments and scenes. However, I did laugh at the little jerk motion in the copy process. No, that was actually very funny, very smart, and I like that a lot. So, I like the film. I wish it could have been a lot more of to my liking, but I get it. It does feel like a film that was just a little overcooked. I don't think it's a direction problem. I definitely don't think it's an acting problem. I think it's a writing problem. I think the film, and maybe you're right, maybe what you just said about it being adapted from a book, and it's like, we're taking the elements from the book, and it's kind of like, if you've read the book, you kind of know a little more, and you see we're trying to distill this into a 2-hour movie. It happens sometimes. I think the writing was kind of the issue here. I think this film could have been a lot sharper, a lot cleaner, a lot more focused, and been a lot more effective. At the end of the day, it just felt a little overcooked, and I think that hurt it in my estimation. But hey, look. Still very, very anxious to see any other projects Bong Joon-ho works on. Because, it's still a fascinating movie to watch, even if it doesn't quite work for me on all elements. And it definitely worked for you a little bit more than it did for me. So overall, good. I hate to say it's not doing so hot box office wise for a science fiction genre movie.
It cost a pretty good penny to make.
Cost a lot, and obviously delayed and coming out later and not making tons of money, so it's not going to be one of the shining entries in Bong Joon-ho's filmography from a historical standpoint. But I do think it definitely carries on the themes that he is absolutely interested in and likes playing with. I'm going to go back to the word you used, shaggy, a little messy. I think that's kind of the way I would describe it. I think that's a fair assumption or fair assessment. Okay, Chris, it is still playing in theaters right now, so, at least for a little while. So if anything we talked about sounds interesting to you or sounds intriguing, definitely. Hey, look, I recommend checking it out. I think especially right now in the movie theater, there's not a whole lot of other great stuff to see. This is like the best film that's out there right now to see in the theaters, in my estimation. So sure, go check it out and see what you think. All right, Chris, when we come back from a quick break, we've got a couple trailers to share of new films coming out, and we also will be hitting your recommendation for the episode. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back with Foot Candle Films in just a moment. Welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. We had our review of, what did we read? Mickey 17. That's right. Sorry.
Daylight Savings Time. It's killer.
It does. It gets me every time. I don't know why. I'm just tired, but I should have planned my weekend better, knowing that time change was going to happen, but I didn't, and I'm paying the price for it this morning. All right. So yeah, Mickey 17, that was our review in the first half. In the second half of the show here, we like to sometimes mix it up. Sometimes we have some news items. Sometimes we have some things going on in the film business. This week, we've got some trailers. We haven't done trailers in a little while, Chris. I think it's been a few weeks.
Okay.
We've been so wrapped up in Oscar talk,
True.
Academy Award predictions, and blah, blah, blah. So let's get back to a couple trailers. And I always like this. The two trailers I'm going to show you, Chris, and I want to get your feedback on. One of them I have not seen yet either.
Okay.
So hopefully we're going to be watching it together for the first time, unless you snuck behind my back and watched one of these without me knowing.
Okay.
The second one I have seen, but I want to talk about because I'm intrigued. So we'll just leave it at that. Okay. First up, we love the studio A24. I almost think we could almost have a segment on this show where all we do is like show a trailer for an upcoming A24 film. I think the last one I showed you might have been the Death of a Unicorn from a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, we just seem to have every few weeks a good, interesting looking A24 film trailer to explore. Well, this week is no different.
Okay.
I can't comment if this is good or not. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
But it is an A24 film. It is an A24 horror film.
Okay.
Starring Sally Hawkins. You know Sally Hawkins, Shape of Water,
Yes.
some Mike Lee films,
Happy Go Lucky.
Happy Go Lucky. Yeah, just a lot of films she's been in.
Sure.
So this is a film that's being directed by the Philippou brothers? They're ones who did Talk to Me.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see Talk to Me?
I did. Yeah.
And did you like it?
It was okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. From what I'd seen in the trailer and everything, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
But yeah, it was interesting.
Well, A24 did have a hit with Talk to Me. It was considered a pretty big hit for, small budget film, but did pretty well box office and got some good reviews on it. So they have brought that pair of brothers back to make this next film. It's called Bring Her Back. It is a supernatural thriller. And again, as I mentioned, it stars Sally Hawkins. Again, I have not seen the trailer. I'm anxious to see it. The film also stars Billy Barat, Sarah Wong, and Jonah Wren Phillips. Let's see. Trying to think if there's anything else. They shot it in Australia for this. Talk to Me premiered in 2022. Was a big breakout at 2023 Sundance. It turned into one of A24's biggest hits ever, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Okay.
It made $92 million, which is the third highest grossing release in A24's history. So
third highest.
Third highest.
Okay, probably behind Everything Everywhere All at Once, I would assume.
I would imagine. Did that make it up to 100 million? I'm not sure.
I'm really bad with box office stuff. So.
Anyway, it was a big hit. It was a big hit for the studio.
Sure.
So bringing back the directors to make another supernatural thriller horror film. Again, let's take a look at the teaser trailer and see what our initial thoughts are on Bring Her Back.
Hey, good. He's gonna bring it back. He's gonna bring it back. Are you in there?
So that was the teaser trailer for Bring Her Back. It is coming out May 30th in theaters. Chris, it was a true teaser trailer. It just gave more of a mood and vibe for the film.
And
Any
it seems
initial take?
completely in line with what they were doing with Talk to Me. I mean, they specialize in pretty good sound design, and similar like we most recently saw it in Nosferatu, the Robert Eggers film, where like contortions of bodies are just in really odd angles in the way they do bodies. just is very disconcerting. There's a lot of that going on in the trailer here. Talk to me had when they would become possessed, their eyes would turn this really eerie black, and they're doing like similar type things here, and just you hear voices that are strained. It just they obviously know what they're doing. They have like a style that's also, you can just tell, yes, this seems like completely in their wheelhouse, very of a pair of a kind with Talk to Me. So good. We'll see how it ends up. I think too, it reminded me a little bit. There again, it's a teaser. You can't tell a lot going on, but imagine a much scarier kind of a take on Presence in a way.
Yeah.
Steven Soderbergh's film that we've ever, where you don't get a lot from the teaser for that too, but you just get this sense of eeriness. But here, there's a lot of like disconcerting imagery to go along as well.
Is a little, yes. Yeah. Disconcerting.
A lot of some body horror stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. I still have not seen Talk to Me. I do need to kind of check that out because I have heard good things. And again, I will do a horror film if I think it's a good, smart horror film and it's gotten some good reviews and feedback, then I'll check it out.
And I think this is the right duo that I'm thinking about. I think they got their start kind of doing YouTube videos. And then that led to Talk to Me. So it's interesting, obviously relatively new filmmakers on the scene. So we'll have to keep that in mind. It's Bring Her Back,
Bring Her Back.
From the title, there again, not having read a description, just the title seems like it's kind of someone dies, and it's kind of like a Frankenstein type thing of like trying to bring someone back.
A little Pet Cemetery thing going on. So maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is coming out May 30th in theaters. We'll be anxious to see how that looks when it comes out. All right, Chris. This other one, I got to be honest. I'm excited for this film, but the fact that it's going to be coming out on Amazon Prime in just like 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
And I'm just now have heard about it this past weekend. Doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence in it. And supposedly it has played at a couple of big festivals, or I think it played at South by Southwest recently and got kind of a mixed response. So don't know. Okay. But the reason I'm interested in this, I was a big fan of the film Baby Girl last year.
Okay.
Nicole Kidman, I thought was really good in that film, and I kind of feel like she got a little robbed at award ceremony time, some of them, in my personal opinion.
Okay.
So she's also a very prolific actress. She's in a lot of films. A lot of films and TV shows. Well, there's another film that she's in now. It's called Holland. Okay. And it is a thriller, kind of a Hitchcock style pick is how they're defining it.
Okay.
And it is coming to Amazon Prime March 27th.
Okay.
It does star, obviously, stars Nicole Kidman. It also has Matthew McFadden, who you may know from Succession.
Okay.
He's what is his name in Succession? He's the
husband of
I forget his name.
I forget that too.
We know him.
He's one of the main characters in Succession.
It also stars Gail Garcia Bernal in it as well. The premise of the film is it sees Nicole Kidman in the role of Nancy Vandergroot, a Stepford wife-like character in a tulip and windmill-filled town who has a community pillar husband played by Matthew McFadden. But the tale has Nancy and her friendly colleague played by Bernal begin to suspect the Michigan town has a secret, only to discover nothing in their lives is what it seems. So I like the visual style of the film because it is playing up this whole, there's a town in Michigan where it's like very much like a little mini Holland.
So not a town in Holland, but
it's like,
town in Michigan.
Okay. It was originally titled Holland, Michigan was the name of the film. They just shortened it to Holland.
Got you.
It's directed by Mimi Cave. And don't know if you remember the name or not. She did the film Fresh that had,
Sebastian
Stan and Daisy Eggers. Right. Played in that film a couple years ago.
Horror film.
Yeah, which we liked. Yeah, we thought was good.
That was also released straight to...
it was. That was straight to online viewing, I believe. I don't think it was Amazon.
I don't think it was
might
either.
Have been
Hulu, maybe?
Maybe it was Hulu. Okay. Yeah. But, so anyway, so let's check out the trailer for Holland. Okay. And directed by Mimi Cave. And let's see what we think of this.
Every day, I get to wake up in the best place on earth, Holland, Michigan. look around myself and it feels like a dream.
Yoo-hoo.
Hey, Nance.
It's just perfect.
Please tell me Harry's gonna dance in Tulip Time this year.
Didn't Pastor Bob say the dancing was the devil?
Not Dutch dancing, silly. Just all the other kinds.
So that was the trailer for Holland, again coming out March 27th here in just a couple weeks on Amazon Prime. Chris, any good feedback from you on this? It look interesting or not your thing?
No, I'll definitely check it out. It does look interesting. I guess a little trepidation I have is as always, when you watch a good trailer, but you can still think, okay, they might have revealed too much. Mm-hmm. I did like Fresh, as you mentioned, Mimi K's prior film, so I am interested to see this. I like the two leads in the film, and then I like Gail Garcia Bernal as well. So, and it looks like the imagery in the film just looks really sharp.
That's what I think really
I am worried,
interesting.
and you referenced kind of like a Stepford Wife type thing. The most recent iteration that I can think where we had something similar to this was Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah, it
And
definitely
so-
gives off some vibes of that as well.
So I'm kind of like, well, so I hope there's a little
I hope
more.
there's something different.
Right.
Yeah. The trailer, I hope the trailer's a little intentionally misleading to make you think, yeah, it's a Stepford Wives thing. It's the male dominated, the women are subservient, whatever. I hope that's a misdirect. Now, if that is the story they're telling, I just hope they tell it in an interesting way, or at least make it interesting to watch and not so derivative. The trailer does feel like, outside of the Holland imagery, which I think is cool, it does look very derivative of some of those films you mentioned.
Sure.
But here's hoping it's something a little different, a little more interesting, a little unique.
Absolutely.
I like everybody that's involved in the production. I think, and I love a good thriller. I love a good mystery. I love a good kind of odd community world where you're trying to figure out what's going on. That's totally up my wheelhouse. So we'll give it a shot. We'll definitely see how that turns out. That is going to be Holland. That is coming out again March 27th on Amazon Prime. For anybody who's a Prime member, you will have it available to you, waiting in your watch queue on that date. Okay. So, Chris, those are two films I'm kind of curious about that we're going to be keeping an eye on. But there's a film that has already been released that you have seen that you want to recommend for us. This is the Chris Fry patented, acclaimed, really. I mean, honestly, it is kind of the highlight of the show.
As long as it's not notorious, I guess that would be bad.
Notorious can be good.
In a way, I guess.
People know about it.
Sure.
That's
sure.
good.
There's that.
Chris Fry has a recommendation for us of a film that we may want to check out. Chris, what is the recommendation for this week?
It would be curious to know if anyone listening to the podcast has not seen this film. I have seen it. I just recently revisited it. It came out in 1993. I'm talking of Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. I revisited it because I was reminded of how many times Mr. Ralph Fiennes, or yes, as Conan O'Brien joked, Ralph.
We get to call him Ralph now.
Right. How many times he's been nominated but has not won an Academy Award. And I was like, Schindler's List, I saw it back in 93, it won a bunch of Oscars, but I haven't seen it in a long time. I think he might have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, not sure. And if he wasn't, he should have been. Liam Neeson is the main force behind the film. He is Mr. Schindler. Upon revisiting the film, I'd forgotten, which I don't know how, but just how harrowing Schindler's List is. Steven Spielberg, he's done a lot of really good films. But when I think of somebody who's going to present like harrowing imagery, especially more than just a sequence, like we had the Storming the Beach sequence in Saving Private Ryan. Yes, graphic, violent, but then for the most part, the rest of the film plays, it's still a good film. This film, though, it keeps returning to just so many harrowing images that just make it a difficult sit. Ultimately, at the end, we know how the film ends. He's rescued or saved these many people's lives. So it helps a little bit with the resolution of the film, but still just solid film, probably not surprising. I would say it's probably one of Spielberg's best, but my main point takeaway this time, Fiennes is Goth, I think is how they say his name, Goeth. He has to be one of the most horrific characters ever portrayed on film, because he's just so, you can just tell he's just a cold, maniacal machine of wreaking havoc upon all these people that are in the concentration camp. And then at times, like, seeming to be almost nice, but doing so because it's a manipulative way. And then just in a second, snapping back to just being so fierce. God, it's one of, even though I really, really like Grand Budapest Hotel and Ralph Fiennes in that, I gotta say this is probably even a better performance, because it's just so calculated and you see his vulnerability at times when you can see how he admires Schindler, because Schindler has all this money and people like Schindler, and you can tell nobody likes Goth, and his people that are working with him, they can tell he's just a crazy person. So it's just a lot of character work going on that just make it such a strong performance from Ralph Fiennes. So Schindler's List.
Ralph Fiennes was, it wasn't his first performance in a movie.
So it's an early performance.
It was very early. He was in a couple of things. He was in Wuthering Heights, the 1992 version, as Heathcliff. He was in a couple smaller appearances on I think a couple TV episodes. But yeah, I think Schindler's List, that was like his big.
Put him on the map.
Definitely to American audiences.
Gotcha.
Like, this is an actor now. And then for him to go straight from Schindler's List in that supporting role, but very, very good role, and then taking the lead in Quiz Show, the Robert Redford
so that
movie,
came
which was
right
afterwards.
Okay.
It's like, that was a pretty big introduction to Ralph Fiennes for our society. So that was great. Yeah, I have not seen Schindler's List probably in at least 20 years.
Okay.
And it is one that I know keeps popping up as I wouldn't mind a revisit on it. So
and there's just a lot of strong match cut type cinematography. Like there's some candles at the beginning that are extinguished that then goes right to like a train with the steam coming out of the train. Like there are a lot of match cut type things like that just you can tell Spielberg he's on his game.
So the word is, I'm actually been listening to another podcast that's been going through film by film the earlier the 1980s and 90s films of Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
And getting to that point where it's talking about Schindler's List, where he was working on Schindler's List while doing post-production on like Jurassic Park, The Lost World, like the second one, it's like, that was kind of a Spielberg's thing for a while. It's like he would be in production on one film while also doing post-production on another film at the same time, kind of tick-tocking his film work. And he commented how going during the day and like working on Schindler's List and then having to go and cut, or no, maybe it was the other way around. It was like working on Jurassic Park, The Lost World, a sequel that he didn't really sound like he really wanted to do, but just kind of did for the money. And then also spending his time working on Schindler's List on the other side is like, there's quite a dichotomy of films to be working on together. So yeah. Now Schindler's List, I think we forget how good and how impactful that film is.
And I think it's I would agree. And I think it's, it gets a lot of awards. Then people kind of, not that they're disparaging the film, they're just like, that film's good, but you just kind of forget about it because it got so much attention at the time.
It was so heavily talked about for so long.
And so you then just kind of forget about it. But worth a revisit. Like I say, I imagine most of our listeners have seen it. If you have, you might want to revisit it. And if you haven't, I definitely recommend checking it out. It is probably rentable everywhere, but it is streaming right now. If you have a Netflix account, it is streaming on Netflix. So I recommend checking it out or re-checking it out.
Yeah, I'm just verifying something right now. Yep. So Schindler's List came out in 93. Actually, I take it back. I'm sorry. It was Schindler's List. He was working on Jurassic Park, the original one, at the same time. So 93, both Jurassic Park and Schindler's List came out in the same year.
Wow.
From Steven Spielberg. So he was working on those two kind of simultaneously. He did say that was kind of an interesting back and forth between those two. Because Lost World didn't come out till 97.
Okay.
97, he released The Lost World Jurassic Park, and he released Amistad in the same year. So he did kind of have a thing where he was like double
That's
dipping in certain years for
interesting.
sure. So yeah.
Yeah, one popcorn film or more like, that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, that was kind of his thing for a little while. Is he did a few years where 2 films in a year, and it was kind of that one for him, one for them kind of mentality to it.
Sure.
Can I just go off on Steven Spielberg? Not go off on him. Can I just talk about Steven Spielberg just for another second or so?
Sure.
I'm always curious, like what somebody of his stature is working on next. I mean, you bringing up Schindler's List kind of gets me thinking a little bit too. Mm-hmm. And me listening to this ongoing podcast, like really digging deep into his movies of that time period, it did make me think, okay, well, what does he have going on next? Because The Fabelmans was the last film he released. That was 2022. That was...
And I really liked it.
You did. I was okay with it. 2022, that was 3 year ago,
Sure.
at this point, 2.5 years ago.
Right.
So supposedly there are 3 projects in the hopper for him that are like kind of in that upcoming phase that don't know which one's going to happen for sure when, but I do know of one that is coming out. I think I just heard the name for it being the
Dish.
The Dish. That's it.
Yes.
Emily Blunt is going to be in it.
Colin Firth.
Colin Firth, Josh O'Connor,
Coleman Domingo,
Eve Hewson. And it is a science fiction film, from what I understand.
Okay, that is more than all I know is the cast and the title.
All I know is a science fiction film, and I think it has to do with aliens. So Steven Spielberg possibly returning to the world of aliens.
That would be super exciting.
It would be. So here's hoping. Outside of that, there's also 2 other projects that he's kind of attached to that who knows if they'll happen. Bullet, the old film Bullet. I think of Steve McQueen back in the 70s.
Have not seen it.
Bradley Cooper supposedly and Steven Spielberg are kind of collaborating on a new version of Bullet. Frank Bullet.
Now, this is something our intern would probably have to dig up. Steven Spielberg, Bradley Cooper. He's never directed Bradley Cooper, correct? But they have been working together. I think at one time he was going to do
the
Maestro,
the Sondheim movie.
Yeah,
right?
he was going to do Maestro, and then didn't. And Bradley Cooper,
not Sondheim movie. God, what am I talking about? Not Sondheim.
Not Sondheim.
The other composer, Bernstein.
Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah.
He was going to direct that, and I think Bradley Cooper was going to star in it. But then Spielberg stepped away, and Bradley Cooper just directed it as well. So, but obviously they have some type of
relation. I can't think of
relation.
anything that they've done together.
Okay.
No. So yeah, we got the Bullet project.
So that'll be interesting. They finally will get a chance to work together. Okay.
And then there's one other project he has kind of got his name on that we'll see, but no people have been attached or anything. Okay. It is a film about Ulysses S. Grant.
Huh.
So that's the 3 very interesting different films Spielberg could be working on. You got a big event film, science fiction film, possibly alien involvement with a big cast. You've got a Bullet remake, film of a 70s franchise, and then or 70s character, and then you've got a historical drama with Ulysses S. Grant. So we'll see which one happens.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
I think in Letterboxd at least.
There is a George Gershwin project too.
Okay.
Yeah,
in Letterboxd at least, they have 2026 as being like a release time frame for
That's
the
what
Dish.
I'm seeing as well. In IMDb, it is listed as Untitled Steven Spielberg Amblin Universal Event Film. I hope that's the name of it.
Yes, that would be instead of the Dish. Yeah. Okay, April 12th, 2026 is the release date they supposedly have for the
That's
Dish.
like a year from now.
Yeah,
Okay,
roughly.
all right.
Yeah.
Well,
so we'll see. Yeah.
Very exciting. There were some rumors that The Fabelmans might have been Spielberg's last film when it came out, just because he was attached to nothing else beyond that.
I see.
And normally Spielberg is always attached to like 3 or 4 other films that he's jostling around.
Right.
When Fabelmans came out, it was like he had nothing else attached. And everybody's like,
this
is
it.
kind of his coda. This is like his final film, because it was a good summation of...
I think it was.
Yeah, it was a good recap of his career in general.
Yeah.
But obviously, he still has other projects to do now, so we'll see with that. Okay, sorry for the Spielberg thing. It's just you recommended a film that got me thinking about everything I've been reading about, so thanks for letting me indulge. Okay, Chris, I think we're wrapping it up for today. We had our review of Mickey 17 in the first half of the show. Then we had trailers for Bring Her Back, and then also for the movie Holland. And then Chris gave a recommendation of Schindler's List, the happy feel-good movie of the year, Schindler's List, that Chris is recommending we should still check out. Chris, if anybody wants to comment and join in the dialogue with anything we talked about today, how can they do so?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on various social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. Just check us out. Usually some form of Foot Candle Film or Foot Candle Film Society. You'll get in contact with us.
Is it pretty safe to say if they do a search for the word Foot Candle, I mean, are we pretty much what comes up, or is there something else?
I think our website usually does pop up, whether it's, I think. At one point, I think it would be maybe you'd get the definition of foot candle, which is like the unit of light, used in photography and so but I think in general, if you do a Google search for us, I think we do come up because we've been around for a while now.
No,
not really.
No, we don't. There's a lot of electrical supply and lighting design companies.
Okay, that's not
that
us.
come up if you search for foot candle. So we're not one of those.
Maybe Foot Candle Film.
I
Just
think
add
if you
that
do
extra.
Foot Candle Film, I think at that point you get us, and you're pretty solid there. Yep, that's it. Foot Candle Film is what you want to search for. Don't search for just Foot Candle. We do not sell lights.
No.
We do nothing dealing with electricity.
No,
so
we do not. Right. We're also on Letterboxd, where Alan and I try to track what we're seeing and leave quick takes sometimes. Do us a favor. The number one way you can support our show is by listening, which if you're listening right now, you are doing that. We thank you for that. Also consider giving us a star rating, write a review, or share with friends or whatever service you listen to your podcasts on, because it'll help us reach new listeners. We'd appreciate it. Alan mentioned the other thing that we do, in addition to this podcast, we run a film society. We also run a film festival that will be coming up September 19th through the 28th. So it's a ways off yet, but if you're going to be in Western North Carolina, we would love to have you attend said festival in September.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap us up for today. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Foot Candle Films, and we will look forward to talking to you next time. Take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.